Today I want to talk to you about law number 7 of teamwork. It is the law of the compass. And the law of the compass says vision gives team members direction and confidence. Let me define vision. Vision is a picture of the future that creates passion within you today. What I want you to see is it's a picture of the future, but if all you see is a picture of the future, it's not a vision that moves you. It's got to create passion within you. It's kind of like the picture before you, the passion within you. In other words, it's very possible to see a picture of the future of your company or your organization and not be stirred. That's not a viable vision. A viable vision not only gives you a clear picture of what tomorrow looks like, but it kind of stokes a fire within you today. In my book, Developing the Leader Within You, I have a whole chapter that is set aside of teaching vision casting and the power of the vision. And the reason for that is because every successful leader has a vision. Isn't that true? I've never met a leader that didn't have a vision. If you go up to somebody and say, hey, what's your dream? And they look at you and say, I have no dream at all. And I'm the leader of the organization, but it beats me what we want to do. They are a leader in position only. They're not a leader. Because if you're a leader, you've got the vision, you've got the dream, and you've got the passion within you. So what I want to do, because vision casting is so essential, your ability as a leader to cast vision to the team, and your ability as a team member to catch the vision of the team is going to determine the success of your team. Let me break down this whole idea of vision. And let me give you the vital components of casting the vision, because I guess the best way to explain this is a checklist for you. If you have to cast a vision to your team, whether you're a school teacher or in the business community or a pastor of a congregation or a government leader, if you've got to cast vision, there are certain components that you need to check off to make sure you have in your vision casting speech that'll make it successful. Let me give them to you. Number 1, clarity. Clarity brings understanding to the vision. In other words, when you cast the vision, when you draw the dream, it's got to be clear. I used to live in San Diego, and for several years I had a wonderful seats right behind the first base dugout of the Padres games, and so I went to some Padres games, and I know they're not very good, but in fact, when I was out there, they were pretty terrible. In fact, I used to say they're the finest minor league team in the majors. But anyway, between about the 3rd or 4th inning, on the big diamond vision, they always did something that was very interesting. You know, between innings, they try to entertain you a little bit. And between, I don't know, 3rd, 4th inning, sometime in there, about the middle of the game, what they would do is out on the diamond vision, they were going to put the picture of a baseball player on the screen. But the way they did it, instead of putting the whole picture up there, they would put one piece of the puzzle, of the face of a ball player. They would put it up. Now, obviously, when they put just one piece on the diamond vision, you couldn't tell who it was. So basically, the whole crowd is watching the diamond vision. They put one piece, and you're kind of looking at it because you don't have a clue. And then they put another piece. And, okay, now you look at it a little bit more. And they would put another. Now, what was interesting is, after they would put maybe 4 or 5 pieces of the face puzzle together on that diamond vision, all of a sudden you could hear the crowd. They go, oh. Now all of a sudden they had enough pieces to know who the player was. I've often thought to myself, the response of that crowd watching that game, watching that puzzle at that time, the response of the crowd when they had enough pieces of the puzzle to figure out who it was, is what happens in your organization, on your team, when you begin to take the vision and begin to put the pieces together, and all of a sudden it becomes clear enough that everybody has it figured out. Clarity is essential on the vision. If the vision is fuzzy, the people are fuzzy, and we don't need any more fuzzy people. We don't need a fuzzy team. Well, no, we just have a wonderful group of people. They're quite fuzzy, but they're wonderful people. So, how do you make the vision clear? By asking, and then answering 2 questions. Question number 1, what do you want them to know? And question number 2, what do you want them to do? If you can answer those 2 questions, what do I want you to know? What I want you to do. Those 2 questions will begin to clear up the picture. Clarity is number 1. So ask yourself when you're casting the vision, is it clear? Let me put it this way. If you can't figure it out, neither can the players on the team. Okay? Number 2, connectedness. Let me explain this. If the vision is to be successfully cast, it has to have a feeling of connectedness. It has to bring the past, the present, and the future together. In fact, I put the statement because I like it. When people touch the past, they will reach for the future. You have to have a connectedness. Here's what I find. Many times when we cast vision, it's all about the future. And it's not about the foundation that has been laid yesterday. So what happens is, when we talk about the future, but we don't talk about the foundation that has been laid, whether it's the price that was paid years ago or the sacrifice, whatever, when we just talk about the future, we eliminate part of the picture. Just as if all you do is talk about the past, there is no future. So what you do is you develop a connectedness. It's not either or, it's both and. And here's what happens. When you talk about the past, you bring value to the people that have already paid the price. When you talk about, so the older people receive value out of it, and the newer people receive security from it. They say, oh my goodness, wow, somebody has been thinking about this way before I ever got here. Somebody's already paid the price. There's a security that comes when you're able to connect the past with the future. Connectedness. It's very key to vision casting. Component number 3 in casting a vision. Purpose. Purpose brings sense to the vision. Purpose makes the vision make sense. The vision describes where you're going. Purpose describes why you're going. And people won't constantly go to a destination unless they know the reason why. Isn't that true? Why are you spending that money? Why are you taking that time? Why are you expending all that energy? If you don't have a why, if you don't have a purpose in the vision, you won't stay on target for the vision. You'll give it up very quickly. You'll lay it aside. Why? Because the purpose is what keeps you on the path to the vision itself. Number 4, goals. When you cast vision correctly, there are goals, because goals bring measurement to the vision. Goals keep the vision realistic. There's a measurement. How well are we doing? Are we there yet? How far are we? How soon will we get there? Now, too many of us, we're like my friend Charlie Brown. Now, there's a study in leadership. Charlie Brown's in the backyard. He's got his bow and arrow, and he's having target practice. What he's doing is he pulls back the string. He lets the arrow fly wherever the arrow flies. No matter wherever it sticks in the board fence. Charlie Brown takes a marker, and wherever the arrow is, he draws a target. And he lets it fly, and he's over here, and he's drawing another target. Well, Lucy comes out. You know Lucy, the mother of all board members. And Lucy comes out, and she sees all these targets all over the fence. And she says, Charlie Brown, that's not the way you do target practice. And Charlie Brown says, I know it, but if you do it my way, you never miss. Now, I know all kind of people. That's exactly how they do vision casting. They just put a vision up there, and they just slap any goal they want to. and they hope. Are you all right? And let me tell you something. Hope is not a strategy. I don't know, oh yeah, well we hope to. Yeah, well we're hoping to get there. We're hoping that this is going. We're hoping it all turn out. Hope's not a strategy. And so in your vision, have measurable goals so you can always see where your progress is. Number 5, honesty. Honesty brings integrity to the vision. And let me say what else it does. It brings credibility to the vision caster. Make sure that your dreams and your vision is honest. In other words, if I get up in front of you, if I'm leading you as a team, and I get up in front of you, and every 6 months I put a dream out here or a vision out here that we don't accomplish. But every 6 months I put up another dream. I say, well, for the next 6 months we're going to do this, or the next 6 months we're going to go there. But we never get there. We never do that. After I do that a half a dozen times with you, when I get up to cast vision, you're basically saying, here comes hot air again. Because there's no integrity in the vision. And when there's not integrity in the vision caster loses credibility. You've got to be honest. You've got to let them know where you are. Number 6, stories. You've got to have stories in your vision. Because that brings relationships to the vision. That makes the vision warm when you tell stories. Telling stories about how somebody in your company has helped that goal become a reality. Those kind of things draw people to you. Too many times we try to cast vision without stories. Put stories, the stories warm up the vision. The stories personalize the vision. The stories make the vision identifiable by the average person. Number 7, challenge. The challenge brings stretching to the vision. In other words, in your dream, in your vision, have stretching room. Give them room to fly. Don't be afraid to challenge people. Sometimes I'll run into leaders and they'll say, well, I don't know if I want to challenge the team. I'm not sure the team's ready for this. Let me tell you something. Put the challenge high. Stick it up there. Here's what I find. Winners stretch to the challenge. Whiners shrink from the challenge. And the greatest way to get rid of your whiners, your weak link, is to put a challenge up there. They'll run fast. Their first question is not, how do I climb Mount Everest? Their first question is, where's the exit? See, when you put the challenge high, to winners, they say, sick 'em. And to whiners, it makes them sick. And there's a world of difference between those two. Number 8, passion. Passion brings fuel to the vision. Passion heats people up, by the way. And again, talking about the winners and whiners, here's what. Passion fires up the committed and fries the uncommitted. Just does. When you turn the heat up, some people get fired up, some people get fried. Number 9 is modeling. Modeling brings accountability to the vision. Modeling basically says, I'm going, do you want to go? Can we go together? Number 10 is strategy. Strategy brings process to the vision. As I look back at my leadership with the team, my greatest days of leadership will never show up on paper. And the reason why is my greatest days of leadership is not when my organization grew the fastest. In San Diego, California, in the mid-'80s, I was pastoring this growing dynamic church. And the only way we were going to be able to keep growing was to relocate the church, and so we realized we were going to have to do that. And so we found 80 acres on the freeway, and we began the process of relocation. Now, I'm not going to go in the story today because it's way too long. In fact, it's way too discouraging. But we had all the setbacks any person would ever not want to have in a relocation process. The biggest setbacks were mainly environmental, and if you're in Southern California, in fact, the Wall Street Journal interviewed me one time, and the Wall Street Journal said, if you pull this off, you'll be the last church in Southern California that will be able to buy 80 acres of land and pull it off. I guarantee you, he said, it isn't going to happen again because of all the environmental laws. There was a bird called a black-tailed gnatcatcher. Didn't even live on the property. Just flew over the property and every once in a while landed. Rested, you know, just... Because the black-tailed gnatcatcher landed on the property, the environmentalists said we couldn't build our buildings on the property. Now I could go through barriers and barriers. In fact, finally we got through that. How we got through that was by buying 28 acres somewhere else for the birds to land on. As if you train a black-tailed gnatcatcher. Said, you don't land here. You quarter of a mile over there. That's your landing spot. $8 years later, millions of dollars later, we got the zoning. 8 years, millions of dollars. You talk about a challenge? I had to raise millions of dollars on land that I couldn't even assure the people we would build on. I had to keep hope alive on land that we were not even sure would be ours. And for 8 years, I kept hope alive. What was it Napoleon said? Leaders are dealers in hope. And I became a dealer in hope. And what's beautiful is in May of 2000, I flew back to San Diego to dedicate the first building on that mountain. 5,000 people. Absolutely excited about what had happened. But as I got back on the plane to fly back to Atlanta, Georgia, I began to think about the price that was paid and the vision that was cast. And all I'm saying to you is leaders constantly, they're keeping the picture in front of the people because they know this. If the people lose the picture, the passion leaks out of their life. So I put in your notes. It's out of my Developing the Leader Within You book. Some closing thoughts on vision. Here's what experience has taught me. The credibility of a vision is determined by the leader. The acceptance of a vision is determined by the timing of its presentation. The value of a vision is determined by the energy and direction that it gives. The evaluation of a vision is determined by the commitment level of the people. And the success of the vision is determined by its ownership by both the leader and the people. One last teamwork thought. Great leaders take the vision from me to we. That's your goal. The vision has to go from me, the leader, to we, the team. And until that happens, the vision will never be successful. But law number 7 is a great law. It's the law of a compass. Vision gives team members direction, and it gives them confidence. Today I want to talk to you about the law of the bad apple. You can see where we're going on this law, can't you? It's law number 8 in teamwork. The law of the bad apple says, rotten attitudes ruin a team. Now let me just stop here before I do any lecturing on this law and say to you that I know nobody in this studio is a bad apple. I mean, you're here. You wouldn't be here if you were a bad apple. And I also realize everybody that's watching this training teamwork video, you're not a bad apple. Of course not. You wouldn't be in the training if you were a bad apple. But let me ask you a question. You in the studio, you that watch the video, let me ask you a question. How many of you know someone that's a bad apple? How many of you are seated beside that person right now? Don't go there. Don't go there. Some of you ruined your whole day right there. Let's talk about this bad apple that basically, because of a bad attitude, ruins the whole team. I wrote a book in 1985 called The Winning Attitude, and in the top section of this law, I tried in that book to define an attitude, and let me just take you through it now. What is an attitude? It is the advanced man of our true selves. Its roots are inward, but its fruit is outward. It's our best friend or our worst enemy. It is more honest and more consistent than our words. It is an outward look based upon past experiences. It is the thing which draws people to us or repels them. And it is never content until it is expressed. It's the librarian of our past, it's the speaker of our present, and it's the prophet of our future. That's what an attitude is. It's an outward expression of an inward feeling. When I'm speaking in religious circles sometimes, I define attitude this way. I tell people, your attitude is the John the Baptist of your life. It goes before you saying, he is coming. He's coming. Isn't that true? Can't you spot a bad attitude before the person ever says anything? I mean, haven't you just seen people, and they're walking towards you maybe on the street, and you say, oh my goodness. Huh? Haven't you been on an elevator, somebody gets on the elevator, and you go, oh, thank God I'm not going home with them. Now, on the team, what I have found is, you show me a bad apple. You show me a person has a bad attitude, and it will begin to spoil the rest of the team. In fact, just for fun, I brought with me today some real resume and cover letter excerpts taken from real resumes and cover letters printed in Fortune magazine. Okay? I mean, these are real resumes. These are real cover letters of people who want jobs. And you talk about bad apples. Listen to this. Here, I'll just read a few of them. Reason for leaving last job? Maturity leave. Don't you know some people you want to give them maturity leave? Come back in a couple years, you need a maturity leave. Here's another person who said, I am wholly responsible for 2 failed financial institutions. My middle name's bankrupt. Here's another person who said, it's best for employers that I do not work with people. Now there's somebody you want to hire, isn't it, huh? Yeah. Put them in a corner, build a wall around them. Here's another one. I failed the bar exams with relatively high grades. Here's another one. Note, please don't misconstrue my 14 jobs as job hopping. I have never quit a job. Oh, there's a bad apple. Whoa, I've never quit a job. Hello? Reason for leaving last job. They insisted that all employees get to work by 8:45 a.m. every morning. I could not work under those conditions. I love this one. The company made me a scapegoat, just like my previous employer. One more. The person was asked for references, and they put in their form, none. I've left a path of destruction behind me. Kind of says it all, doesn't it, huh? Just kind of says it all. Now, let's talk about this bad apple attitude on the team that hurts the rest of the team members. Let me give you 4 attitude thoughts, okay? Here we go. Number 1. Your attitude is a choice. Let's start there. And the reason I want to start there with your attitude is a choice is because I've taught on attitude for quite a while now, since I wrote a book back in 1985 on it. And I just want you to know, I run into adults all the time who somehow think that the attitude they have was given to them. They'll look and they'll say, well, yeah, I may have a bad attitude, but you don't realize who my parents were. Yeah, I wasn't toilet trained at the right age. Or I grew up in a bad environment, or I didn't get this, or I didn't have this. And they're wanting to blame everybody else for the attitude they have. Now listen to me very carefully. The attitude you have right now, let me tell you something about that attitude. Whether it's good or bad, whether you're a bad apple or good apple or no apple, let me tell you something about your attitude. You chose it. That's why I don't feel sorry for people who have bad attitudes. I don't go out of my way to try to help people with bad attitudes and come over to them and say, oh, Missy, I'm so sorry you're feeling bad, and oh, I wish it were better for you, and oh, let's just hold hands and sing Kumbaya. No, Missy, if you've got a bad attitude, let me tell you something. Get a good one. It's a choice. And be honest with you, Missy, until you get a good one, do me a favor. Don't come around. Help us all. Leave. Yeah. Because I watch teams all the time try to pump up people with bad attitudes. I'm telling you right now, you don't need to be pumped out. If you've got a bad attitude, you need to be shipped out. Because it's a choice. The reason I don't feel sorry for people who have bad attitudes is you chose your lousy, stinking attitude. And can I tell you something? Until you fix it, don't come around. Just a thought. My wife Margaret and I, many years ago, were doing a conference. We had about 400 in the conference, husbands and wives, doing a little bit of stuff on marriage. And we were in a question and answer period. And I'll never forget this one lady. She raised up her hand and she looked at Margaret, addressing the question to Margaret. And she said to Margaret, she said, does John make you happy as your husband? Now, when she asked the question, do I make Margaret happy? I thought, oh, I'm so glad she asked that question because I happen to think I'm a good husband. So I was very excited for Margaret to answer her. Until she answered her. Because when Margaret was asked the question, does John make you happy? She looked right at this lady. I mean, I'm talking about, she didn't even hesitate. She didn't even think. She looked at her and she says, no, he doesn't make me happy. Now, get the picture. This is my conference. And I'm looking at Margaret, and immediately, I mean, people are stunned with what she's, no, he doesn't make me happy. And so I looked at Margaret and I said, honey, I said, explain to them what you mean by that fact, that I don't make you happy. Have you ever asked somebody to explain something, and they did, and when they did, you wish you wouldn't have asked them to explain something? That's exactly what happened, because when I asked her, I said, well, explain what you mean, Margaret. I said, well, okay, I'll explain. She said, she looks right back at this lady, and she says, in the first 6 months of our marriage, I realized John would never make me happy. Now, I don't know if you have the gift of discernment. But we're going downhill rather rapidly here. And then she said, thank God she said this, because she said, for the first 6 months, that's exactly what I expected, for him to make me happy. She said he had this little church and he worked hard all day, and I was teaching kindergarten, and I'd come home from teaching kindergarten and I'd be tired and he'd be tired. She said, I found out real quickly that my goal was not to wait on him to make me happy. And then she said something that was so powerful. She said, I realized 6 months into my marriage, the only person that can make me happy is me. And she said, when I took responsibility for my own happiness, she said, John has made my happiness even greater. Which I'm saying, whew, that was close. What Margaret was saying is, I'm responsible for my attitude. Not my husband, not my wife, not my boss, not the other team players. I'm responsible. Grow up. Get a life. It's a choice. Every once in a while I run into people that say, they're kind of grubby and say, what happened to you? Well, I got out on the wrong side of the bed. I wish it were that easy. If it were, I'd send you home. I'd say, go to your bedroom. Jump on your bed and roll out the right side of that sucker. Your attitude is a choice. The second attitude thought is that an attitude compounds when exposed to others. It compounds. Attitudes never stay with a person who has it. They're contagious. They spread. They multiply. You can't stamp them out. Attitude thought number 3. Bad attitudes compound faster than good ones. Isn't that true? You work hard to get a good attitude going. Bad attitudes carry their own weight. Huh? You say, what in the world happened to the team? Bad attitude got out. Began to compound. And number 4, attitudes have the power to lift up or tear down a team. In fact, here's the way this works. Great abilities plus rotten attitudes equal a bad team. Great abilities plus bad attitudes equal an average team. Great abilities plus an average attitude equals a good team. Only great abilities plus good attitudes equal a great team. Many teams are not successful because of an attitude issue. Not an ability issue. Not a fact that they can't do something. It's an attitude issue. For most teams, I would say to you, you're only an attitude away from success. Just an attitude. It's not, can we get somebody more skilled? Oftentimes it's not, can we find somebody with greater ability? To be honest with you, many times it's, can we just change an attitude? Let me tell you, because I love this story. It's one of my favorite stories, but it's a great attitude story. It's about a salesman who went to this barber who was always negative. Now, first of all, let me stop here for a moment. How many of you know somebody who's just always negative? You with me? Okay. Just think for a moment. We won't dwell long here because this is depressing. Picture them in your mind right now. Think of the feeling it brings you. I mean, haven't you all had one of these Excedrin headache days where you wake up in the morning and you just know it's not going to be a good day, and haven't you just laid flat on your back and looked up at the ceiling and said, Dear God, help me not to see so-and-so today. And then your spouse walks in the room anyway. But anyway. Just kidding. Here comes the salesman to this negative attitude barber that he's got. So he's cutting his hair, and so he asked the salesman what's up, and the salesman said, well, I'm excited. He said, I'm going to Rome, he said, tomorrow. And the barber said, well, he said, what are you going to Rome for? He said, well, I've got this sales presentation in Rome I'm all excited about. And the barber quits cutting his hair and he says, look, he said, first of all, he said, you don't want to go to Rome. He said, have you ever flown overseas? It's a hassle. He says, first of all, he said, I'm here to tell you, you won't land on time. Planes are always late. He said, not only that, he said, the food's not good on the plane. He said, where are you going to stay when you're over in Rome? And the guy told him, and the barber said, oh, not that place. Oh, my goodness. He said, I was stationed in Rome for a while. He said, that's a horrible hotel. He said, of all the places you don't want to stay, that is the, oh. He said, you'll be lucky to get towels at that hotel. He said, what are you going to do? He said, well, I'm going to do a sales presentation. Oh, he said, you don't want to do a sales presentation. He said, Italians, they talk all day. They never make decisions. You don't want to do that. Well, obviously, the salesman's just getting discouraged with the barber. So he says something about the Pope under his breath, and the barber said, what'd you say about the Pope? Oh, he said, well, I was kind of hoping while I was over there to have an audience with the Pope. Well, now the barber, he's shutting everything down. He says, this is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. He said, popes don't see people like you. Popes see kings and popes see presidents. He said, the Pope is never going to see you. He said, this is the dumbest thing you've ever done. A month later, the salesman's back in the barber's chair. Barber says, how was your trip? Oh, the salesman said, greatest trip I've ever had. He said, you remember you told me that I shouldn't go over there? Well, yeah, I don't think you should go. He said, that plane was incredible. He said, we left JFK Airport just on time. He said, the food, best I've ever had. Slept like a baby. He said, the wheels of my plane landed, hit the runway exactly on time, perfect flight, great food. Got in a taxi, went to that hotel you said I shouldn't stay at. He said, I was blown away. He said, when I got out of the taxi, there the people of the hotel were standing out in front of that hotel to greet me with towels in their hands. Said I had a balcony overlooking the Vatican. He said, it was the greatest place I've ever stayed in my life. Well, this is staggering the barber, who's not used to good news and can't handle good news. And he said, the greatest thing about the whole trip is I got to see the Pope. Now, the barber, he just stopped and everything. He's right in front of the guy. He said, what do you mean you got to see the Pope? He said, I've never met anybody that's seen the Pope. I've never talked to anybody that's seen the Pope. He said, I never thought you'd get to see the Pope. He said, that's for presidents and kings. He said, you mean you saw the Pope? Yeah, I saw the Pope. What did he say to you? He said, they brought me into this incredible room. It was ornate. I never saw so much art. I never saw so much gold in my life. He said there was a runner, a path towards the Pope clear at the other end of the room. And I looked way down there and I saw him standing there, and he said, it just humbled me. And he said, I just kind of bowed my head and I humbly walked across the room and head bowed. And I finally got to where he was and I fell at his feet and I kneeled there, and he put out his hand. And he says, my child, my child. Where did you ever get such a lousy haircut? It says it all, doesn't it, huh? It says it all about our attitude and how we look at life. And all I want you to realize is the law of the bad apple says that a rotten attitude will ruin a team. And everybody knows you don't need a barber, not a negative one, on your team. Today I would like to talk to you about the law of accountability. Law number 9. The law of accountability says teammates must be able to count on one another. And I thought I would define accountability since it's not a word. Because when I was working on the laws, I said there has to be a law of accountability, but it's not a word called accountability. But you can't let things like that limit you. Because when I was working with my team and they said, well, that's not a word, I said, it has become one. And to define accountability, it's very simple. Accountability is the ability to count on someone when and where it counts. Now, isn't that a good definition? Huh? I mean, you can now go around and say, you know, I'm countable. Are you countable? The law of accountability says that you have the ability to count on someone when and where it counts. Now, we all know that there are some people you can count on when it doesn't count. and where it doesn't count. But I'm talking about when and where it counts. You can count on that person. Now let me just talk about counting on somebody. In fact, let's do a little audience participation on this for a moment, okay? I want you to give me the one word that comes to your mind when you think of somebody that you can count on. I mean, you think of somebody that really is countable, okay? You can count on when and where you need to count. Give me, and there are probably like a half dozen one words. Give me a word.
Faithful.
Faithful. I love that word. That's a good word. Yes.
Loyal.
Loyal. Good word. Yes.
Character.
Character. Absolutely. Yes. Dependable. Yes, both of you. Dependable. That's exactly the twins, I'm sure. Okay. Yes. Okay. Flexible. Maybe. Yes. Consistency. This is good. Yes. Trustworthy. Okay. Now you've got the idea of a person that is countable. See, I defined a new word to you, and you already understand it. Now let me turn this around for a moment. Give me one word to define a person that's not countable. Think of a word that a person that you just don't count on them. Yes.
Unreliable.
Unreliable. Well, that's very good. Yes.
Hostile.
Hostile. You've got a picture of a person in your mind right now. You need to take that picture and go home and have target practice is what you need to do. Yes, clear up there. Selfish. Oh, you're good. Yes.
Dishonest.
What is it?
Dishonest.
Dishonest? Can't count on to be honest. Good. Maybe one. Yes, sir.
Lazy.
Lazy? You got a picture of somebody in your mind too, don't you? In fact, as you're giving me these one-word descriptions, isn't it true? You all have a picture of somebody? When I ask you to give me the one-word definition of a person that is countable, every one of you had the picture of somebody that you count on. When I said give me a one-word picture of somebody that's not countable, every one of you in your mind, you had the picture of someone. Every one of us in this room knows what it's like to be let down. How many of you have been let down by someone else sometime in your life? Now let me ask you another question. How many of you have let someone down someplace in your life? Yeah. Let me define and let me help us understand accountability by giving you three words. And by the way, the words you gave me were so good. In fact, the word I'm going to give you, the first word that you're going to fill in the blank, was a word that was given to me a moment ago in the studio. The word is character. Character plus competence plus consistency equals accountability. Look at those three words for a moment. Character. We've got to talk about it for a second. If you're going to be countable on the team, if the teammates are going to count on you, if the leader is going to count on you as a teammate, you have to have character. You have to have the right stuff on the inside. When I wrote the 21 qualities of a leader, I had a person say, now, why did you try to talk about the inside qualities of a leader? And I said, it's very simple. If you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else? What's on the inside determines what comes outside. As a man or a woman thinks in her heart or his heart, so is he, so is she. So character has to be in this accountability definition. You've got to be right on the inside to do right on the outside. Okay? Competence, though, that's got to be in there. Let me put it this way. If we're a team and we're getting ready to go into the big event, and you have all the best character in the world, I mean, you're trustworthy, you're honest, you're kind, I mean, you've got all these great character traits. Let me say something. If you're not competent, I can't count on you. And the reason I can't count on you is because you don't have the competence or the ability to perform on the level that the team requires. So it's true that character is important, but character alone doesn't make you countable. But by the way, competence alone doesn't make you countable either. Don't you know some people that are very competent, but they don't have any character? The good news is they're going to get there. The bad news is you don't trust them. The good news is they're going to take the train and arrive. The bad news is you don't want to be on the train. So they have character and they have competence. You've got to have both. This is not an either-or thing. Character plus competence. Now, yet I know some people, they've got good character, they're competent, but I still don't count on them. And the reason I don't count on them is because they're not consistent. The third word is consistency. Now, when you can put those three words together, they have character, they have competence, and they are consistent. Now you're talking about a person that has countability. Earlier in one of the other training tapes on the teamwork laws, I referred very quickly and briefly to the law of the inner circle. That's a leadership law out of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And that law of the inner circle basically says those closest to you determine the level of your success. Those closest around you. In other words, your success or failure very seldom is dependent upon all the people out there. It almost always is dependent upon the few people right here. Now, the reason I'm going back and talking briefly about the law of the inner circle is that when I think of accountability as far as a law of teamwork, here's what I want you to know. Every inner circle member that I have, it's only about a dozen, but every inner circle member that I have, of all the teamwork laws they have to be a 10 on, of all the teamwork laws they have to be a 10 on, let me tell you something right now, this is the law. I would not have an inner circle member that did not make a 10 on this law. I have to count on my inner circle people. If I question their character, they can't be on the inner circle. If they are incompetent, they cannot be on the inner circle. If they lack consistency, they cannot be on the inner circle because too much is going on and we have too many things to accomplish for me to somehow have an inner circle member that breaks the law of accountability. I want to encourage you. Time out just for a moment. I want to encourage you, when you go back to your team, when you go back to the inner circle, not the whole team, but the 2 or 3 people or the 5 or 6 people, those that are on your inner circle, those that are going to make you or break you, those that are closest to you, go back and ask this very simple question. Are they accountable? Do they have character? Are they competent? And then do they do both with consistency? If you can say yes to those 3 things, you have a potential inner circle member. If you say no to one of those 3, never let them on the inside. I promise you, if you have an inner circle member that is not countable, it is only a matter of time until they'll hurt you. Coach Bill McCartney, who for many years was the football coach for the University of Colorado, later years has become the leader of the Promise Keepers movement across America. Coach Mack is a very good friend of mine, and he's a marvelous motivator. And one of the things I like to do when I'm with Coach a little bit is I like to talk to him about how he got the best out of his team. Because at the University of Colorado, when he was coach there, his team became #1 in the nation. And so he had consistently winning good teams. And so a lot of times I'll say, Coach, talk to me about your team. And he said, John, one of the things I did one year, and so I asked him, how did you really get your players up for the big game? You know, when Colorado's playing Nebraska, when they're playing Oklahoma, the big games, how did you get your team up? He said one year, he said the week before we were to play Nebraska, which was our chief rival, and Nebraska usually dominated Colorado until Coach Mack went there. He said we were going to play at Nebraska. And I think University of Colorado maybe had never won at Nebraska, but it was a game of which kind of like a David and Goliath deal. So he said, I took a football, and he said, I gave it to every player on the team. And he said, I want you to take this football, and I want you to dedicate this football and this game to someone you greatly love. It can be a brother back home. Maybe it's your mom. Maybe it's your high school coach. But somebody you greatly love and respect. He said, in fact, I want you to write him a letter. And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to write a letter and say, I'm dedicating my play when we play Nebraska to you. And he said, what I want you to do is hold the football this week. He said, after we play Nebraska, we'll put the score on the football. And that game, they defeated Nebraska soundly. And Coach told me, he said, John, I have no question the players played above their head because he said they became, here's the word, countable to somebody they respected and loved. In fact, he said many times before a big game, he said, I would go to a player and I would walk up to him and I'd say, let me ask you a question. What are you going to do in this game to help us win? And you know, he said the players are tempted to say, well, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to really play my best, coach. And he said, it's not enough. No, I'm not asking you if you're going to work hard. He said, I always expect that from my whole team. He said, what are you going to do in this game that'll help us win? Coach, I'm going to cause somebody to fumble. I'm going to recover a fumble. I'm going to intercept a pass. I'm going to run for a touchdown. I'm going to open the hole for the back. He said, I made every player tell me what specifically they were going to do in that game to bring a victory to us. And he said, when they spelled it out during the game, he said many times, he said, I'd go up to a player and say, do you remember what you said you're going to bring victory, help us bring victory? Yes. Have you done it yet? Have you done it yet? Tremendous teaching on being accountable. So here's the accountability test, because I love this statement. The highest compliment a leader can give a team member is to count on him or her. In other words, the highest compliment that somebody could ever give you is the fact that they look at you with great integrity and say, I'm counting on you. I'm counting on you. So, 3 questions, very simple. Is my character solid? I don't know. You're going to do this for yourself, between a 1 and a 10. 10 being you've got solid character. 1 being you're in trouble. Am I confident in my responsibilities? Am I consistent in my character and competence? And you know what? I would hope, you may not be there now, but I would hope I think to be countable, you ought to be somewhere at least in the number 7 range on all 3 of those. And maybe you are today, maybe you aren't today. That isn't the issue. It's you got to start somewhere and take the accountability test. Let me illustrate this way. I think I want to take this law and really illustrate it the best way that I possibly can. Because this law of accountability for the team and for the team players is absolutely huge. So let me just be a little bit personal with you, if I could be. I have what I call a John Maxwell accountability count. In other words, I keep track of my accountability. Now, to keep track of your accountability, the first thing you got to ask yourself, who am I accountable to? And in my situation, it's going to be different than your situation, although some of the things will be very similar. I lead a wonderful organization called the Enjoy Group that basically is a umbrella for 3 different companies. I'm accountable to the people in my nonprofit ministry, Equip. I'm accountable to people in Enjoy Stewardship Services. I'm accountable to people in Enjoy. Because I'm the founder, because I'm the leader, I'm accountable to a lot of people. What I say, what I do, how I behave, major accountability. But I'm accountable not only that, but because I write books. And I've written a few now. And because I write books, people, when they buy a Maxwell book, they have a certain expectation. So every time I write a new book, one of the things that weighs heavily upon me is this book's got to be better than the last one. I can't coast on my popularity. I can't somehow just write off a book real fast that's not my best effort and hope that people will buy it because they've bought other Maxwell books. And I know this, if they buy a book that's not what it should be or not what it could be, they're going to be greatly disappointed. And I don't want to do that. I'm accountable to my readers. And when I go speak, you know what? I'm accountable to the people I speak to. I was up at 4:30 this morning. Now, I wrote the book, The Laws of Teamwork. What was I doing this morning at 4:30? Sitting at my desk, reviewing the laws of teamwork. Because the author is going to speak. And he better know his subject. See, I'm accountable to you. You folks came today. Many of you came from out of state, flew in. Many of you drove a long distance. You've paid a price to come here. Can I tell you something? I can't take that lightly. You didn't come here to hear somebody get up there and just talk and waste your time. You came to hear somebody that's going to add value to your life. So when I come out here today, it's more than cameras and lights and training videos. This is the real deal. I'm accountable to you. Can I tell you something? A leader is in trouble when they start to slide their accountability. I'm not only accountable to you as an audience, or places where I go for companies and corporations. They pay pretty good dollars to fly me in to help their teams get better and add value to them. And I'm here to tell you, they don't pay me those dollars to get in there and just tell a funny story and motivate them. I'm more than a motivational speaker. I'm a motivational teacher. My goal is not just to make you feel good. I want you to feel good, but I want you to feel good and learn something. That's better than feeling bad and learning nothing. I'm accountable. When this day is over, you're going to say either this was a good day or this wasn't a good day. He either added value to me and took me to another level, or I should have done something else. I'm accountable. And when I get home, I have my wife, Margaret, been married to her now. You're waiting, aren't you? 32 years plus. She's only 35. She's my best friend. I'm accountable to her. And to my 2 married children. And my 2 in-laws. And to my 2 grandchildren. Oh, I got 2 granddaughters. Madeline and Hannah. Both under a year. Both children, first only girls to be born without sin. It's an incredible story. I'm accountable. In fact, let me help you get this accountability thing really straightened out in your life. I'm going to define success for you. I think success can be easily defined this way. Those closest to me love and respect me the most. Now let me explain that to you, so just make sure you get it. This is simple. Late this afternoon, I'll go home. Margaret's my best friend. Can I tell you something? There's something wrong with me as a leader or as a team player. When people who don't know me well love and respect me more than those who know me well. So I want you to like me. You should. If you're discerning and have good taste. You should. I like you. I want you to like me. But I just want everybody to understand in the studio and everybody watching the video on this incredible law of teamwork, accountability. What I want you to know is, although I want you to like me, it's not near as important for you to like me and respect me as my wife Margaret and my kids. Hello. You see, if those who know me the least like me the best, there's probably something wrong with my character. And I'll just close the law off because I don't want to just get my personal faith in here, but I believe there's a day when I'm also going to be accountable to God. I'm going to have to answer the big question. What have I done with my life? Have I added value to people? Have I climbed the ladder of success only to find out when I got to the top it was leaning against the wrong building? Here's what I know. When I go in with my teammates into the big event, I want those on my left and I want those on my right to be countable. But the person I want to be countable the most is me. Because most of the victories that I have to struggle with are not with others. They're with me. And if I can lead myself, then perhaps I'll be privileged to lead others. Today I want to talk to you about law number 10. That is the law of the price tag. The law of the price tag says the team fails to reach its potential when it fails to pay the price. So let me ask you a question. The question is very simple. When does a person, when does a team, or an organization stop growing? The answer, very simple, is this: when it fails to pay the price required for growth. It is almost always a price problem. This is such an old illustration, I hesitate in using it, but it'll work well here. So let's go old for a moment, okay? It's the picture of the fleas in a jar, and you look at them, but they don't jump out. The reason they don't jump out, even though they could because there's no lid on it, is because when they put the fleas in the jar, they put a lid on it. Now, here's a flea captive in a jar with a lid, and of course the flea wants out, so they start trying to jump out, and of course every time they jump out, they hit their flea brain against the top of the jar. And you know, I don't know how much feelings a flea has, but you do that after a while, it can hurt. So what's the flea do? The flea all of a sudden realizes if they only jump this high, oh, that feels so good. Now the moment the flea only jumps this high, you know what the flea trainer, if there is such a thing, you know what he or she does? They take the lid off. You don't need a lid on the jar when the flea has determined only to jump so high so that that flea will not get hurt again. Now let me just say something. Growth is always painful. In fact, life's painful. Paul Harvey one time said, you can tell you're on the road to success, it's uphill all the way. So basically what I'm saying is, you know, if you're saying, you know, life is good and the team is just gelling and nothing's difficult and everything's easy and we're just coasting, I just want you to know, if you're coasting, there's a reason. You're going downhill. There's a price that always has to be paid. And teams that fail to pay the price, organizations that fail to pay the price, individuals that fail to pay the price, eventually pay a price. Are you with me? Yes. You pay a price for not paying the price. So I'm going to encourage you under the law of the price tag to pay the price. Because that's where the success, that's where the potential, that's where the fruitfulness comes in. So let me give you 3 price points today. Number 1, the price must be paid by everyone. Let's start there. There's no such thing as on the team, few of the team members pay a price and the rest of us don't. Because if you don't pay the price, everybody pays the price for you not paying the price. In other words, everybody's going to feel the effects, and everybody's going to have to pay the price. Many years ago, I did a lecture called How to Get to the Top. And it was a fun lecture, and it was a very simple lecture, but basically I said, there are a few things you have to do to get to the top. And one of the things I said is, and this is simple, but everything I do is simple, you have to understand. I'm simple. My name is John. I'm a communicator, not an educator. I have an education, but I'm not an educator. Educators take something simple and make it complicated. I mean, that's what they do. That's just the nature of the beast. If you can understand it, they're disappointed. Where communicators take something complicated and make it simple. And somebody said to me one time, they said, well, everything you do is so simple. I said, it has to be. It's me. I'm not capable of complicated. It's not who I am. So when you look at where we are on paying the price, when I did this lecture on how to get to the top, one of the 4 things that I said about how to get to the top is that you have to get up to go up. Now, that's not brilliant. But I know a lot of people who never have figured that one out. I know a lot of people who somehow think that somebody is responsible to carry them to the top. And they've been saying, I am waiting for my ride. They think that there's kind of an escalator to the top. And you just kind of get on the escalator and you know, I guess, I don't know, what do you do? One day you wake up and you're on top and you say, oh my goodness, look where I am. You know, how did I get on top of Mount Everest? How did this happen? Now, there's a price to be paid to get to the top. There is in your life, there is in my life. I remember I was doing a leadership conference last year, and it was amusing. During a break, I do what I'm doing right now. I just kind of hang around during breaks and say hi to people. I'm just kind of a hang around guy. So I'm sitting on a stool and I'm hanging around, and this young kind of a person comes up to me. Now, I'm going to qualify that. They all seem a little bit young right now. And he looks at me, and he's a little bit bold. And he said to me, he said, I would like to do what you do. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'd like to do what you do. He said, I've been sitting here listening to you all day. And he said, I figured up 1,500 people. They paid X amount of dollars to come and hear you. And you've been sitting there taking drinks out of a cup and teaching us leadership. And people have been laughing. And they paid to hear you. And he said, I want to do what you do. And so, I mean, I'm a little bit amused. I mean, it's kind of like, how do I apply? So I thought, well, you know, maybe we need to do a little teaching. So I looked at him and I said, well, I understand. In fact, I really do understand. I relate to the fact that you like to do what I do. I said, I've got another question to ask you. He said, what's that? I said, would you like to do what I did so you can do what I do? See, the problem is never having the dream. That's why I'm never impressed when people say, well, I have a dream. So does everybody. You go to sleep, you get one. I'm really not impressed with your dream. Well, you know, I've got this goal and I've written out my goals. And that's wonderful. Good. That means you had a little time in a legal pad or a computer. What really impresses me is not your dream. What really impresses me is when you show me how you're going to pay for it. What really impresses me is how you're going to get there. You start telling me the price that you're going to pay, the hours that you're going to give up, the relationships perhaps you won't have, the money that you will spend, the time and energy and effort. You see, everything has a price. And the bigger the dream, the bigger the payment. Small dreams, small prices. Big dreams, big prices. If you're going to have a great team, there's a huge price to pay. So the question is not, do you have a dream? The question is not, would you like to do what I do, or would I like to do what you do? The question is, would you like to do what I did, and would you pay the price to get where I am? And if you're not sure about that, I'd sit down sometime and tell you what the price is. Because there's a huge price. But that's not only in my life. Any person that got to the top paid a price to get there. In fact, the higher you go, the greater the price. See, the price isn't much at the bottom. I mean, you know, when people start off in life and they say, well, I gave up everything, I say, well, big deal, you had nothing. So it means you gave up a coffee table and an old TV. You had nothing. So I'm never impressed with people who give up something in the beginning because probably they didn't have much in the beginning to give up. What really impresses me is when you have something and you give it up. You see, sacrifice isn't doing without. I know all kinds of people who do without, never had sacrifice in their life. I know people who do without every day, and it's because they're undisciplined and lazy. So I'm not impressed with what you don't have, but I am impressed by what you willingly give up to go to another level. That's why several years ago I did a cassette tape, a leadership tape called 10 Trade-Offs, usually worth making. And I basically talked about in life 10 trade-offs that you go through, which you basically say, am I willing to trade this for the next level? Am I ready to trade? And every time that you go to the next level, there has to be a trade-off. You never go to the next level without paying something for it. And it's like going to auction. My wife and I, we love to go to auctions. We like to go to estate auctions. And can I tell you something? One of the things I've noticed about auctions is when the price starts off at the bottom, everybody's in it. Well, yeah, I'll bet, But what I've noticed is the higher the price, the fewer the bidders. That's the way it always is. So the law of the price tag says if you want to develop a team that's going to stay on top, there is a price that will be exacted out of your life. Always. Let me give you another price point. Not only must the price be paid by everyone, secondly, the price must be paid all the time. Now here is a great mistake. Somehow we think that if we one day succeed, we stop paying the price. So a lot of people say, if I could just make it, if I could just get up there, wow. You see, the greatest detriment of your success tomorrow is your success today. Success causes people to fail a lot more than failure. It's when I become successful and say, oh my goodness, this feels good, and I made X amount of money, and look at my title, and look at my position, and look at my car, or look at my house, or look at whatever I think that I should look at. It's all of a sudden, that's when the tendency is to coast. And there's an idea that somehow if I work hard enough, that someday I won't have to pay the price anymore. And I want to tell you that isn't true. A classic example of that is that most sports teams, when they win world championships, they seldom repeat. Why? Because when they win a championship, what do? They go on the banquet tour. They go from town to town telling everybody how they won last night and could I have another piece of chicken? And they come to training camp 22 pounds overweight. And they haven't played any ball during the off season. Why? Because they've been telling everybody else how they did it. And that makes you an historian. One of the most important days of my life was in the early 1970s, sitting in a Holiday Inn in Lancaster, Ohio, and having a guy named Kurt Kampmeyer ask me this question, John, what is your plan for personal growth? Now, I didn't have a plan for personal growth. I didn't know I should have a plan for personal growth. Never entered my mind. But it embarrassed me because when he asked me what my plan for personal growth is, I didn't have one. And so instead of being honest and saying I don't have one, I tried to tell him I had one. I didn't tell him I had one. I just said, well, you know, I work hard and you know, I rise early in the morning and I gave him kind of my daily schedule. And he said, no, I didn't ask what you do in the day. I said, I didn't ask what your daily schedule was. I didn't ask what your job description was. I asked you what your plan for growth. And I try to give him other answers. Well, I read books, and you know what I mean. And finally, I just found I don't have a plan. Isn't it amazing all the stuff we go through before we get honest? And I'll never forget, he looked at me, leaning intently over that table at the Holiday Inn. I'll never forget, he looked at me and he said, John, look at me. And I looked at him and he said, growth is not an automatic process. You don't automatically grow. You don't automatically develop yourself. How true that is. There is a price that you have to pay to grow. Now, the third price point is the price compounds if not paid early. Some of you today that are listening in this studio are from the financial world. You're in the financial world. You understand compounding interest. You realize that if you can get your money and investments working for you early enough in life, there's a huge return for that as it begins to compound. That is not only true in dollars and cents, that's also true in the price to be paid. You're going to pay the price all the time. That is not the issue. But here's what I'm saying. If you pay the price on the front end, the return has huge potential. In fact, one of the lessons my dad taught me as I was growing up as a kid is a very simple lesson, but I've never forgotten it, and I've tried to teach both of my children this lesson. In fact, if you had stopped my son Joel today and asked him what was one of the lessons I taught you, he wouldn't talk long to you until he would say, Dad taught me to pay now, play later. Basically, it's a very simple principle on the price tag, and what it says is you either pay on the front end and do such a good job paying the price on the front end that you can compound things so that you can play some on the back end, or you play on the front end and you pay on the back end. Now, here's what I want you all to understand. You will pay. So there's no such thing as going through life without payment. You pay. The question is not will I pay. The question is when will I pay? And if you pay on the front end, it begins to be huge of the return on the back end. That's why I love speaking to young leaders and trying to encourage those that are young to begin to learn leadership and begin to learn teamwork and get some of these laws under the belt, because the return begins to be huge. Now, the law of the price tag question is very simple. What am I paying for today that will help me reach my potential tomorrow? Let me explain it this way. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about success. I think, first of all, that people think success is a destination. So they're always saying, someday I'm going to get there, someday I'm going to be that, somewhere, sometime I'm going to do that. And so therefore, success is always somewhere out there, but it's a destination. What I want you to know is success is not a destination. It's a journey. That's why I wrote the book, The Success Journey. I didn't write a book called The Success Destination. Why? Because there's no such thing as a place where you finally one day get to be success. If you're making the right decision today, you're already a success. It just hasn't showed up yet. Are you all right out there? Just as if you're making the wrong decision today, you're already a failure. Just hadn't showed up. See, we confuse success with recognition of success. We confuse failure with recognition of failure. And we have to understand that there's a major difference between both of them. So if I'm doing the right thing today, I am already a success. It just hasn't shown up yet. Now, the law of the price tag is a wonderful law, because what it says is, if I'm paying the price today, if I'm doing the right thing today, the return will come. But if I'm not paying the price today, here's what I found. Shortcuts don't pay off in the long run. In fact, the farthest distance between 2 points is a shortcut. Last January, I had the privilege of being in Central Africa and being at Victoria Falls, and David Livingstone, another great man that I highly admire, of course, was the great explorer of the heart of Africa. First white person to ever see Victoria Falls. So here I am in the middle of the heart of Africa, and as David Livingstone literally blazed a trail going where no white person had ever gone, having his guides take him through the heart of Africa and exploring the country, and just a tremendous person. Of course, he came from England, and someone sent him a message that got to him via messengers and basically said, David Livingstone, I admire what you do, and I would like to come and join you. Could you please tell me the easiest way to get there? David Livingstone wrote back and said, don't come. There is no easy way. Well, there's no easy way. So pay the price today. Pay it daily. Don't wait for the price to get too big. One step at a time. Because the law of the price tag says this, team. If you're willing every day to pay the price and continue to grow and continue to develop, you'll continue to reach higher potential heights. And the law of the price tag says if you do that, you as a team will be successful. Teamwork law number 11, the law of the scoreboard. The law of the scoreboard says the team can make adjustments when it knows where it stands. Max Dupree, who wrote some great leadership books, said the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. And the law of the scoreboard, gang, that's what it really does. The law of the scoreboard defines what really is. So let me share with you today some statements about the scoreboard. Number one, the scoreboard is essential to understanding. If you go to any sporting event, the way you understand what's happening in the game is by looking at the scoreboard. Isn't that true? It's not how you feel about the game. It's not how long you've been at the game. If you really want to know what's happening, you go to the scoreboard. It is absolutely key to understanding. By the way, that's why when you go to an event, a sporting event, that's why the scoreboard is always in a very visible place. Because they realize that the scoreboard must be visible because that's what everybody watches. It's the scoreboard that gives you understanding of how the game is being played, who's winning, who's losing. It just gives you the picture. In fact, the best way I can explain it is this. If you and I went to a sporting event and we came in the second quarter to the event, we wouldn't need to talk to anybody to find out how the game was going. All you have to do is find the scoreboard. Look up the scoreboard, you find out what the score is, you find out what team has the ball, you basically see what kind of progress is being made. If it's a basketball game, how many have fouls on them, how many fouls they have. If it's a football game, what the yardage is, what the time is. The scoreboard is essential to understanding. Statement number two. The scoreboard is essential to evaluating. The scoreboard tells you more than the score. It tells you the condition of the game. It tells you, for example, that maybe one team is a point or two ahead, but maybe their star player is only one foul away from getting out of the game. It lets you know the score, but it also helps you to evaluate. It helps the coaches to evaluate decisions that they need to make. By the way, I've always said this, and I believe this. I believe one of the reasons that people like sports so well is because they get instant feedback. Nothing gives you instant feedback like a sporting event. It lets you know immediately how well you did. I mean, now, I'm not a bowler. I've done bowling before, but I'm not a bowler. I mean, first of all, when I did bowl, I wasn't a bowler. I mean, I'm just not any good at it. I mean, when my middle name was Gutter, it tells you all what you need to know. Now, but here's what I know about bowling. Here's what I know about, I mean, let's say you're in a bowling league, and Friday night's your bowling night, and you've had a hard day at work, and you come home, and you're really tired, and you kind of kick off your shoes, you sit in your easy chair, and you're watching the news, and all of a sudden your wife says, hey, tonight's your bowling night, and you go, oh my goodness, oh yeah, oh. And you really don't want to go. But you know the team's waiting on you and relying on you, so what do? You go get that bowling ball out of the closet, and you carry it and put it in your trunk, and you drive across town in the rain, and you pull in the parking lot and pick up the bowling ball, and you go find your buddies, and you put it down in your lane. Now here's what I know. You're probably tired starting out. But after about an hour and a half, you're laughing, you're having a big time. You got energy. Now where did you get energy? I'm going to tell you exactly where you got the energy. Every time you release that ball down that alley, within about 3 seconds, it gives you feedback of how well you did. I mean, you throw the ball down, you get 2 pins, you get 6 pins, but every time you do it, you get immediate feedback. And I know what you're saying. You say, no, I don't go bowling for that. I go for the fellowship. Well, you do? Then here's what I would suggest. The next time you go bowling, carry that 14-pound ball, put it down on that rack, start talking to your friends and say, you know, we're here for fellowship. You know that, and I know that. Let's just have the manager remove the pins. I mean, after all, we don't care about the score. Now, I promise you, you pick up that bowling ball and let it roll down there about 2 or 3 times, watch it go clear down to the end of that alley and go clunk against the back. And nothing's happened because there's no pins there, and you kind of wait for the ball to get back. It seems like it takes a long time, and you put your hand over there, get a little air there, and you bowl that baby again. Now, here's what I know. You do that about 6 times, you'll never pick up the bowling ball and do it again. Why? No feedback. You see, part of the fact of a scoreboard is it lets you know where you are. And here's what I believe. I believe many times people don't keep score in their life. They don't keep score in their family life. They don't keep score in their business life. They don't keep score in their health life. And so therefore, they don't know where they are. So therefore, no wonder it gets mundane. No wonder it gets drab. No wonder you get tired. No wonder you get a little bit worried. You've removed the scoreboard from your life. So scoreboards help us not only in understanding, scoreboards help us in evaluating. Did I do good? Did I not do good? Did I throw a gutter? Did I throw a strike? Okay. Number 3. The scoreboard is essential to decision making. You cannot make, and I cannot make great decisions without a scoreboard. Let me ask you this question. When does a football coach know when to call a pass play? When the scoreboard says it's 3rd and 17. Hello? When does a manager of a baseball team know when it's time to bring in a relief pitcher? When the bases are loaded. It's in the 8th inning, and the starting pitcher has thrown 160 pitches. He's dying. He needs a healing on his arm. The scoreboard says, hey, you got to change pitchers. When does a basketball coach know when to call a timeout? When all of a sudden the score is not 35-35, but it's 60-35. And the other team's got the big mo going. He said, wait a minute, timeout. We can't let this get away from us. Now, all I'm saying is, you've got to have a scoreboard for decision making. And if the team doesn't keep score, it's never going to be able to make the right decisions. It's never going to be able to understand where it is. And it's certainly going to be unable to evaluate what the progress has been. Statement number 4. And I think this is the most important statement of the 5. The scoreboard is essential to adjusting. Because adjustment is the key to winning. Now, I'll do 5 in a second, but let me talk to you about this adjustment process. You see, too many times we have this mistaken idea that as a team, if we do it right, if we have the right game plan, that we'll never have to adjust. Let me tell you something. Life is full of adjustments. Life is full of you taking 2 steps forward and saying, oh, 1 step backward, and then take it another step and a half. Well, life is full of adjustments. The person and the team that wins is not the team that doesn't make mistakes. The team that wins is the team that adjusts the quickest. You just showed me an organization that fails to adjust quickly. And the scoreboard is what allows the team to adjust quickly. The scoreboard is right in front of you saying, it's time to make a change. It's time to make a substitution. It's time to do a different strategy. You see, when the coach goes into the game, the coach at the beginning of the game has a game plan. And the game plan is very important in the beginning of the game. But as the game proceeds, the game plan gets a lot less important, and the scoreboard begins to be the dominating influence because it tells you exactly where you are. About 3 years ago, I wrote a book called Failing Forward. It's a book about failure. It's a book about adjustments, what we're talking about here. And in fact, when I was on Good Morning America, I was being interviewed on the book, and they asked me, they said, where did you do the research on the book Failing Forward? I did what I just started laughing. I said, it's the only book I've ever written that I didn't have to do research on. I mean, I didn't have to go to the library. I didn't have to go in the web page. I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do is stop long enough to reflect about my life. Because failure for me has been a spiritual gift. Now, it may not be your gift, but it's my gift. I excel in failure. I've always been good at this. And the thesis of the book is very simple. The major difference between average people and achieving people is their perception of and their response to failure. In other words, how I see failure going in and how I respond to failure coming out is going to determine my success. Not how big was the failure, how often was the failure, how dark was the failure, how disturbing was the failure. No, none of that stuff. It's my perception of and my response to failure that's going to determine whether I'm going to be able to overcome it, if I'm going to be able to fail forward. Now, very simply, that's a book about adjustments. The whole thesis of the book basically says, you fail, I fail, we all fail. Now, let me take a little poll in the studio. How many of you have failed at least one time today? Sure. Okay. The question is not, are you going to fail? That's not the question. That's why I'm always amazed that people say, well, I don't think I'd try that. I think you might fail. Well, so? What's new? The question is not, are you going to fail? The question is, how quickly do you adjust? The question is not, are you going to fall down? We all fall down. In fact, one of the things I teach is the fact that when you fall, while you're down there, pick something up. I mean, you're already down there. Isn't that right? You know, clean the floor. I mean, you don't get down there all the time. Do something worthwhile. You all right? And the reason I say that is because our fear of failure and our embarrassment of failure causes us many times not to learn from our mistakes. We're so desirous for people not to see us make stupid mistakes. Then we get up as quick as we fall down. We get up as quick as we can. We kind of fasten our jacket. We say, "Boy, I don't think anybody saw me. I don't think anybody saw me." And everybody in the room says, "Did you see Maxwell fall flat on his face?" Okay, you're going to fall. You're going to fail. The law of the scoreboard says, getting behind in a game doesn't make you lose the game. What makes you lose the game is the failure to make changes necessary. See, the scoreboard is saying you're losing because you're not doing something correctly. Now, the quicker I adjust to that, the quicker I see that scoreboard and say, oh my goodness, I have to change, I have to do something different, the quicker I see that and make the adjustments, the more successful I'm going to be. So the law of the scoreboard, what it does is it allows the team to make adjustments quickly. By the way, would it not be an ignorant coach to look at the scoreboard and see that his or her team was losing and basically say, I'm going to ignore the scoreboard? Wouldn't it be, hey, what would you think of a coach that looked up the scoreboard and didn't like what it said? And said, because I don't like what it says, I refuse to look at that anymore. Yet I know all kind of people, I know all kind of teams, that because they don't like the message of the scoreboard, they refuse to look at it, as if that will make it better. Statement number 5 about the scoreboard. The scoreboard is essential to winning. The scoreboard is essential to winning. It helps you win. Classic example of this. Let me ask you a question. I'll bet some of you will know this. Sports fans will know this. When does a football team score the most points in a game? Last 2 minutes. You're exactly right. The last 2 minutes. The last 2 minutes of the half, the last 2 minutes of the game. You know why that's when a football team scores the most points? Because they realize there's not much time left. And all of a sudden they take risk and they do all kinds of things. The scoreboard basically says, you don't have much time. What I'm saying is that if we'll look at the scoreboard, for some of us, the scoreboard of life, it'll help create within us a sense of urgency as a person or as a team to reach our potential as quickly as we can. Let me give a personal illustration here in closing out the law of the scoreboard. On December the 18th, 1998, I had a heart attack. This was a major scoreboard wake-up call. I mean, up until that time, because I've always been healthy. In my 25 years of pastoring, I never missed a Sunday in the pulpit because of sickness. So I've always been a healthy person. And because I assumed a lot of things about my health, I didn't take care of myself. And so one day I wake up and I've had a heart attack. Close call, God was good, good doctors, life spared. 3 days later, they're about ready to release me. And so my heart doctor is going to come in and talk to me, and I know this is a very important talk. In fact, I've been writing questions, things I want to ask, things I know are going to be very important to me, and I've kept my list. And he comes in, and I say, do you mind if I ask some questions? He says, no. He says, I have some things to share with you. And so I asked questions about life and longevity, and could I have the normal life and the whole process, and he gave me the answers and those things. And then he said, but John, he said, I want you to understand, it's basically conditioned on two things. I said, what's that? He said, one is exercise, and two is proper food diet. Now, he looked at me and realized that I had flunked both of those. And he said, I want you to go home, and I want you to start exercising every day. Not 5 days a week, 7 days a week. And so, I'm sitting on the edge of bed, and I got my legal pad out there, and I'm writing it down. I have my wife, Margaret, there so she can make sure we catch everything it says and, exercise every day. And I said, okay. I said, I got that one. I'll do that. When he looks at me, he said, I doubt if you will. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I do this every day with heart patients. I tell them to go home and exercise. And he said, my finding is 80% of them go home, and for 6 months they exercise, and then they give it up. So he said, when you tell me you'll exercise every day, he said, I doubt that. He said, your intentions are good, but he said, I doubt if you have the discipline to follow through on that. He said, the second thing is you need to change your eating habits. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, you need to quit eating things like chocolate and peanut butter, and he gave me all this fat stuff. Basically, he took away my food groups. And I wrote the list down, and I said, well, doctor, I'll go home and change my eating habits. And again, he looked at me and said, I doubt that. He said, I do this every day. And he said, everybody tells me the same thing, they'll do it. But he said 80% of the people that are heart patients within 6 months, they're back to the old diet that got them into the place of the heart attack the first time. And then he said to me, in all likelihood, I'll see you again. He said, you were fortunate this time you lived. Remember, half of the people who have heart attacks don't get this opportunity. Now, very simply, that was a scoreboard. And I was losing. Totally, radically changed my life. I had a very stressful, difficult leadership day at Enjoy yesterday. And I finally get home late evening knowing I got today going before me, emotionally wiped out and tired. So I sit down and I talk with Margaret for probably 45 minutes. And at 9:15 last night, out to the pool I go for 35 minutes of water aerobics. You see, I do it every day. Because the scoreboard says, John, exercise every day or you're in trouble. Now, what I'm saying to you, whether it's diet or exercise, you need to have a scoreboard. And the scoreboard basically says I'm winning, or the scoreboard says I'm losing, I'm doing well or I'm not doing well. And you need to have a scoreboard for your family life. You need to have a scoreboard, I think, for your spiritual life. You need to have a scoreboard for your health life. You need to have a scoreboard for your business life. But you got to have the scoreboard because the scoreboard basically gives you a picture of where you are. And basically the scoreboard doesn't give you victory. The scoreboard just tells you what you've got to do to win. And the law of the scoreboard says, very simply, that a team can make adjustments when it knows where it stands. So in every area of your life, I encourage you as a leader and as a fellow team member, know where you stand. I'm winning, I'm losing, I'm starting to lose, I'm coming back. Know where you stand. Because if you don't know where you stand, you have no idea where to start and make the progress you want to make. It's the law of the scoreboard. Today I would like to talk to you about law number 12 of teamwork. That's the law of the bench. And the law of the bench says great teams have great depth. The law of the bench says basically if you want to have a winning team, you've got to have more than just a few people that play the game well. If you want to have a winning team in your business, you've got to have more than just a few stars on your business team. If you want to have a winning team in the agency that you lead or the department you lead, you have to have depth. You've got to have a lot of players who really play the game well. Last year I went to Florida State, Georgia Tech game here in Atlanta. And Florida State, I think at that time, was ranked number 1. Georgia Tech, I don't think at that time was ranked. And it was at the end of the third quarter, and the game was close. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there was only 3 points difference. Now, if you've ever gone to a game with me, you realize that I don't have a lot of patience. So I don't ever see the end of a game because I'm out of there. I mean, I see part of the game, and then I go to my car and beat the traffic. I don't want to be in line when all the traffic leaves. So therefore, I've never seen the end of a game. But they tell me that games do end. Classic examples, when I was in Washington, D.C. to do the NBA All-Star game, I had great seats, had a suite with all the other players' wives, all this stuff, for the NBA All-Star game. And I watched the first 3 quarters. And then I left. And it became a great game, they told me. So I don't watch the end of the games. Not because you shouldn't watch the end of games, I get greater joy of getting out of the parking lot than I do watching the end of the game. In other words, to say I watch the end of the game and then stand in line is not, I don't like lines. My definition of hell is a line. I mean, it doesn't have to be hot, it doesn't have to be eternal if it's just a line. You understand that? Okay. I mean, if I went to heaven and there was a line, I would ask, are there alternatives? So I'm not into lines. Okay. Into the third quarter, I look at the 3 guys that brought with me. Margaret hates me to do this because I bring people to the game, and she says, John, stay to the end of the game. Some people would like to see the whole game. And I said, then they didn't want to come with me. So at the end of the third quarter, much to my reputation, I said, guys, let's go. And guys kind of were shuffling a little slow, and I said, well, you know, there's only 3 points different. I said, the game's over. So what do you mean the game's over? Only 3 points. Georgia Tech's got the ball. I said, haven't you watched the game? The game's over. What do you mean the game's over? I said, it's very simple. Every play, Florida State, every play has sent a minimum of 4 up to 7 players onto the field to relieve the person who was just playing in the last down. Every play. Every play. 4, 5, 6 players. Have you watched Georgia Tech? 1 at best. Now, the reason they're doing that is because Georgia Tech doesn't have the bench that Florida State has. They don't have the depth. First string to first string, they may even match up fairly close. But when you get beyond the first string players, the depth isn't there. So I knew what was going to happen. What's going to happen in the fourth quarter? Florida State's going to win. Why are they going to win? Because they are more talented. Well, they're going to win because they're more talented depth-wise. Their players are going to be fresh because they haven't had to play the whole game. It's a classic illustration of the law of the bench. Great teams have great depth. It's impossible for you in your organization, in your company, to have a great team unless you have trained and developed players all the way down in the depth chart of your company. Now, the future of your team can be predicted on three things. Very simple. One is recruitment. Obviously, the future of your team is dependent upon who's joining the team. That's going to tell you a lot about what your future is like. The second area is training. This goes to developing the team. The future of your team is going to be based on how well you can grow your people, develop your people, mentor your people, and train your people. That's a fact. That's why you have this teamwork training video. This is a development growth tool to help people to grow in their development as a team player. Now, so you've got recruitment. You also have training. But there's another way to judge the future of your team, and that's by the losses of your team. Who's leaving? Who's coming? Who's leaving? And what are you doing to develop and train those that are there? Now, let me stop here for a moment because there's a principle that I want to teach. It's called the principle of the revolving door. Have you ever been in the lobby of a hotel? You have been. Sure you have. Stupid question. And when you see the revolving door, what do you see? People coming in, people going out. I mean, you just sit there. Here they come in, here they go out. No, that not only happens in the lobby of a hotel, that happens in a company. That happens in your business. That happens in your congregation, Pastor. People come in, people go out. I love it when every once in a while I'll talk to a pastor and he'll feel bad because he said he lost people. Of course you lose people. Everybody loses people. Don't you lose people? Yeah. You lose people in your company. You lose customers. It's not that you want to lose them, but you're going to lose them. Again, for some of you, it's a spiritual gift. But you're going to lose people. Now, the question is not, are people coming in? And the question is not, are people going out? Of course they're coming in. Of course they're going out. The question is, who's coming in? And who's going out? The principle of the revolving door says this. If, between the number and the scale of 1 to 10, if 8s are coming in and 3s are going out, you have a good future. Are you with me? The principle of the revolving door says, in reverse, if 3s are coming in and 8s are going out, your future is not bright. So the question is not, will you lose people? The question is, who will you lose? In fact, I was reading the other day about a company that every year automatically, they evaluate all their people and automatically they let the bottom 10% of their people in the company go. Because they just realize that in a year's time that the company gets fat, and so they just basically evaluate their people and lop off the bottom 10%. Now, you're going to lose people, you're going to gain people. Some are going to come in, some are going to go out. That's never the question. So when somebody says they lost somebody in the organization, the question is not did you lose somebody, the question is who did you lose? Or we gained somebody. Oh, the question is who did you gain? Your goal as a leader, as a coach of a team, is the way that you build your team and ensure the future success of it is you bring better people in than you lose. And while you're bringing better people in than you're losing, you not only get better people on your team through recruitment, you get better people on your team by training. So the question is not only who's coming in and who's going out. The other question is the ones that are on the team, what are you doing to develop them and make them better? Now that's key. So let's talk a little bit about the bench, and let's talk a little bit about development, and let's talk about the people that are on your team and what are you doing with those people on the team. Because I have written in your notes 6 reasons for believing in and building the bench. Now here's what happens. A lot of times leaders look at their team, and if a person isn't a starter, or if they're just kind of a support role person, they have a tendency to not pour their life into them. They have a tendency not to develop, and they kind of say, well, we got to really make sure the starters are taken care of, and we got to make sure that the key people are taken care of, which is very true. And many times they lack depth because they don't have good training, good development for the people on the bench. So what I would say to you is, to develop a good bench on your team, you've got to believe in your bench. You've got to believe in the players that are sitting there. And that's not always easy. The reason that's not always easy is because we've all had bad experiences with somebody who didn't carry the ball well for me. And I brought with me, because I just think this is so typical of every one of us in this room, I brought with me the function of an executive. Now just sit down and listen for a moment. Okay, here we are. As nearly everyone knows, an executive has practically nothing to do except to decide what is to be done, to tell somebody to do it, to listen to reasons why it should not be done, why it should not be done by someone else, or why it should be done in a different way, to follow up to see if the excuses from the person who should have done it are really followed through, and to follow up again to see if that person has done what they were supposed to do, only to discover that it has been done incorrectly, and to point out that it should have been done, to conclude that as long as it has been done, it may as well be left where it is, and to wonder if it is not time to get rid of a person who cannot do a thing right, and to reflect probably that he has a wife and a large family, and certainly any successor would be just as bad or maybe worse. To consider how much simpler and better the thing would have been done if one would have done it oneself, and to reflect sadly that one could have done it right in 20 minutes, and as things turned out, he had to spend 2 days to find out why it has taken 3 weeks for someone else to do something wrong. Have we all been there? I've been there. Now, when that happens, there's a tendency, instead of us believing in the bench, to withdraw from the bench. And I'm going to give you 6 reasons why you need to believe and build your bench on your team. Number 1, today's bench could be tomorrow's stars. Most of the people on your bench are there because they're still young and they're learning and they're growing. And you have no idea what their potential really is. Number 2, the success of a support member, in other words, a player on the bench, the success of a support member can multiply the success of an inner circle member or a key leader. Now, that is absolutely true. Yesterday, 2 examples come immediately to my mind. My assistant, Linda Eggers, who helps serve and support me in so many incredible ways. It was close to the end of the day, and again, a lot of decisions had been made, a lot of leadership had been enacted. And at the end of the day, Linda came up with an idea of the placement of a person on our team to another place on the team where she would be, I can believe, much more effective. And I was wrestling all day with that issue, and I was mulling it over, and Linda knew this. And so Linda, all day, while she was doing stuff, and she was in some meetings with me, not in some meetings with me, she was thinking it through. And towards the end of the day, she said, John, she said, here's what I think. I think if you took that person and put him over there. And I mean, she got that far in the statement. I said, oh my goodness, you're exactly right. In fact, I said, that's so good. Let's go right now down and talk to the person that she would be assisting. And I went down and talked to that person she'd be assisting. And he said, oh, of all the people in this organization I'd like to have to assist me, she's the one. And I mean, in what the deal took 15 seconds. Now, who thought of that idea? One of the bench players. One of the support people. I'm telling you, folks, I'm telling you, I have no idea how successful I am in the sense of what the other people around me do for me. I mean, it compounds. I'm just telling you things I know. I'm not telling you things I don't know. Yesterday, I came into this very studio because we're doing a simulcast in the fall for, oh my goodness, probably 70,000 people or whatever. Anyway, and we had to do 3 promos of the simulcast. And again, I was in a very pressed day, and I had 2:30 to about 3:15 to do a 20-minute segment, a 10-minute segment, a 5-minute segment. And I mean, I walked in here, and my simulcast team, they're all ready. Cameras are ready. Everything's perfect. All I have to do is sit down, and they just basically, one person stands beside me and tells me what I'm supposed to say. And I repeat it, and they say, that's exactly right. And I look in the camera, and boom. And 45 minutes later, I'm walking out. Now, what made that successful? What made it successful is the bench. It's those support people who went ahead and prepared the way and worked hard and planned and wrote out scripts and asked the hard questions and made sure the strategy was right. You see, it's those people that make the team successful. And what I'm saying is so many times we underestimate what the bench will do for us. And because we underestimate what the bench will do for us, we don't give it the time or the energy or the resources we need to develop the players on it. The third reason for believing and building the bench. There are more bench players than starters. There are more people in a support role than a starring role. Number 4, a bench player correctly placed will at times be more valuable than an inner circle member. When the bench is used correctly and a player is used strategically, they come in at very valuable times. I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. Number 5, a strong bench gives a leader more options. When you have a strong bench, all of a sudden you can do things that you can't do when you don't have the players. So therefore, it gives you more options, which allows you to make better decisions, and which really allows you to make what I call best decisions. And number 6, usually the bench is called upon at critical times for the team. Have you ever thought about this? The time when you need the bench the most in the game is at the most critical times. A player has fouled out. When's a player foul out in the basketball game? Usually toward the end of the game. Usually in the last 5-8 minutes when the game will be won or lost. Think about it for a moment. When's the relief pitcher brought in? That closer brought in when the score is maybe the team is ahead 1 run, two players on the bases, 1 out. In other words, almost always when you call for a bench player, you call for them at the time where they are most, where the game is most critical. Now, all I'm wanting to say is very simple. If you believe in the bench and you build up the bench, it'll give you depth. And that depth in the 4th quarter of the game of life, in the life of your company and your organization, that bench is the one that will bring the victory to you. The law of the bench. Great teams have great depth.